Episode number 64.
You said I got to get comfortable. I'll tell you I'm tired, but I got to do it in a way that sounds all right, man.
We're going again. I'm not stopping.
You're not going to restart it this time.
This is it. Welcome to Through It Therapist Dies podcast.
Another repetition. Epedition?
You've done that before, man.
We have done that before. We welcome you to another episode of Through It Therapist Dies. Craig Graves and Chris Gazdick with you to bring you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. To create emotional growth is what we try to do. Feedback and discussion on throughtherapisteyes.com. Craig, we're going to talk about dysfunctional, chemically dependent family systems this week, right? The human emotional experience. What shall we do?
We should figure it out together.
All right, man. I did a good job on the show notes, man. Look at your notes. What do you notice?
It's a work of art, folks. I may have to post this on the social media just so everybody can see how wonderful it is.
Dadgum, I wouldn't go that far. But no, man, I got bolted out. I looked at all these shows that we talked about, and related episodes is what I'm referring to. So we got several seriously related episodes that we did with this particular show, and I wanted to point them out. I think that I'll be able to point them out through the show because they really relate well to each other. But you'll see in episode 8, Substance Abuse Addiction, what the heck is it anyway? We really kind of started way back early on because in the early parts of this show, Craig, I really wanted to get some, think of it like an NFL team that comes out in the beginning of the game and they got their scripted plays, right? Dude, I had like these scripted things that I really wanted to get out. And of course, substance abuse was one of them. And then we waited all the way to episode 19 with family boundaries, and that was because we ran up on the holidays and whatnot. And then we had an awesome show, man. If you're interested in addiction, you got to see episode 25, where we had a guy who did my roof. Jim, buddy, I think you're still listening out there. He moved to another town. I miss you, man. I've thought of you more than once or several times. He shared his story, and that was an amazing story. And we coupled that off with a book kind of review of Adam Brown, his story with addiction, with the book Fearless. Definitely check that book out, guys. Episode 26, immediately following that with codependence. What are we doing? A whole show on codependence. And that's a big part, pause dramatically, a big part of family dynamics when you're talking about chemically dependent families. Episode 43, beware of screen times, gaming addictions. Remember Dr. Weigel?
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Hope he's still listening, too.
Yes. www.childrenandscreens.com. Go check his stuff out. There's an extra plug, huh?
Yes, sir.
Episode 56, sports gambling addictions, the effects with addiction issues. We sprinkle substance abuse into the show because, again, I am a mental health and substance abuse therapist. And, man, we probably should have shot some statistics, Craig. I mean, how many people do you think are affected by addiction?
A lot. I've told that story about being in court, and losing count of people I knew on my hands and toes. I didn't tell you this, but I listened to Tim Ferriss's podcast on the psychedelics and addiction while we had our kind of downtime.
Man, that is such a
I meant to forward that to you. I meant to forward that to you so you could listen. It's a fascinating discussion.
Oh, I know why that's in my brain. I'm going to tease you a little bit, man. Just stay tuned.
Okay.
Just stay tuned. Keep reminding me about that, man.
It'd be cool to have one of those two guys he talked to on the show to talk about how they're treating addictions with psychedelics.
I gotta figure out who that was, man. Yeah, stay tuned. There's a lot of things, guys, in the listening audience that we work on behind the scenes, trying to put effort out, to bring you stuff, and that's an example of what I just did there in my own head, sort of cryptically. I'm working on that, and I know that's an issue a lot of people are interested in. But that is also another reason to, support the show. We got a donation button on the website. We've got the products that Craig talks about, a link there. There's different ways to help support us, and we need that to continue bringing this kind of stuff to you. So let's talk about families. You ever hear the word dysfunctional?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a true statement to say that used to be a big faddish it was a big fad to, it was in vogue, however you want to put it, to be talking about dysfunctionality, and I come from a dysfunctional family. I mean, does that kind of died down?
All families kind of dysfunctional to some extent.
Yeah, man. I mean, hell, absolutely, absolutely. I know mine is certainly got its issues. So, but you didn't answer. Is that not dying down? Do people still say dysfunctional all the time? I feel like that's.
I don't know, man. I don't hear it in my circles, and I don't watch a lot of TV, so I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cutting down. By no means do I want to bring that back, if I'm correct in saying.
Yeah.
People say that less, but it's where we started out. So, if you know anything about the substance abuse field, I think last show I mentioned Claudia Black, right? So. Bill W., the AA started in something like 1953. Please don't quote me out there, but just by memory, Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson were the originators of 12-step work through AA. And we started to really pay big-time attention in the field in the 60s and into the 70s and kind of really...
To addiction?
Yes.
Is that because of the... things that were going on then with drug usage and hippies and...
I think so. Well, actually, if you go back a little further, around the turn of the century, we learned how to distill alcohol. And so we always had town drunkards, and we had efforts to freeze wine and freeze beer to make it stronger and whatever, back in Stone Age days and Middle Ages and whatever, all the way up. But we never really got good at making it till around the turn of the century. And that's when we distilled it. And that means we learned how to make liquor. The crap that you can run cars on now.
Yeah.
And so the issue with addiction probably has always been around. But when we made it stronger, it also became more of a profound problem. And that's why Prohibition came around. But then, of course, that didn't work out. So it came back with a roaring, I guess, and required attention. Right, so the 60s and 70s, we really began to learn a lot about addiction, and I started training in my field probably around the 90s rather. I grew up in the 80s, and not a whole lot has changed, really. Right, so the information, for whatever reason, hasn't, the difference of astrophysics in 1980 as opposed to what we know now is what. Crazy.
It's crazy.
It's just crazy exponentially getting quicker. That's not really happening with addiction. What we've known about it, we've known for quite a while now, and it's tried and true. And some of this comes from Claudia Black and what we've learned about with families. The dynamics are there, and they've been pretty consistent. So we know it. And we've been trying to figure out how to get more effective treating it and dealing with this stuff.
Well, who is Claudia Black, and what'd she do?
So she's a lady that just decided to kind of focus on the family component of addiction issues. So, we really put a lot of attention on the alcoholic. Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson and AA and treatment centers and, recovery looked at men, not women at the time, men who are drunks. And we started to develop, programming around that, treatment around that. Well, Claudia's probably not the first. I don't know. She's most influential to me. She said, well, wait a minute. We need to look at what happened to me. And she's very public about it. She grew up in an alcoholic dysfunctional family. And I saw her talk live. That was awesome. One of my earliest, coolest trainings is seeing Claudia Black live. And she described a lot of this stuff. And she described a lot of the experiences that she had. And I think because she grew up with her parents who were alcoholics, maybe I think just her dad, I'm not sure. And she said that's not cool that we don't focus on what happens in the family. This is not an individual's issue. This individual's issue is so profound that it affects the whole family. This is, in fact, and now we have it as a common statement, right? Alcoholism is a family issue.
So is that like the Al-Anon? And she's a person who... Did she start Al-Anon?
No, I don't know who started Al-Anon, but Al-Anon is there because people like Claudia, or Claudia herself, did a lot of groundbreaking work with it, developed the awareness that we need to pay attention to all these other family members.
And when did she come along and bring awareness to this?
And again, 60s, 70s. I don't want to age her too much. And
okay.
I'm not like a Claudia Black.
So that was about the same time that we, as a started learning about addiction.
Yes.
So it was okay.
Yes.
I was going to say, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's the case.
No, and it did happen kind of quickly, obviously. Yeah, because it is such a big deal. I don't think I have it on my show notes before I lose this. I heard something. Listen to it. No, I think I said this on the show before, but anyway. Have I said that if you take one person's alcoholic use, one person's behavior, one person's dysfunction with that, I call it the black hole. It sucks all emotional and physical resources. Addiction is a black hole of that person and all the people around them. So if you look at one person's alcoholic dysfunction, it takes 3 generations of sobriety to eradicate the emotional and psychological effects of that one person's addiction. Have I ever said that before here?
No, I would remember that.
Oh, wow.
I would remember that. Yeah, you hadn't said that before.
Yeah, I heard that early on in my career, Craig, and I'm like, nah, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get that. Because that's a long time. If you're an alcoholic, that means your kid and then is going to have kids, and then your great-grandkids are the 3rd generation to be like sort of free from these emotional aspects that come out. 3 generations.
I mean, I guess that's true in some cases, but I wouldn't say all.
Well, nothing's probably good to say all, but as we go through here, this is awesome the way that we started this program then. What?
Yeah. Well, I was just laughing. I've got a personal example. It's kind of interesting, but.
Can you go with it, or?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay,
my grandfather on my mother's side was an alcoholic, and I remember going to his house and like, we talk about when I was in college, we would get, we would pitch a drunk or whatever you wanted to call it. We'd have a good time on a Friday or Saturday night. And to us, that was blowing it out or, pitching a drunk.
Yeah.
My grandfather, man, would drink for weeks at a time. And I remember my mom would go get him and we'd take him to the house and he would dry out. And I remember going into his house and his countertops and table would be littered with, what did he drink? Seagram 7?
Oh.
Bottles everywhere.
Oh
I mean, pitching a drunk was a week or weeks long event for my grandfather, man.
Holy
I mean, he
cow.
was, it was the real deal, man.
Yeah, that's full scale.
But my mother never drank. I think she might have had too much to drink one time in her whole life.
Yeah.
And so she didn't have any, at least to my knowledge, any emotional baggage from that. And she certainly didn't pass any on to me. So, there's your 3 generations, I guess.
Well, I guess your grandfather, right? So the idea here would be your mom's first you, and then so your kids are finally sort of free from some of the emotional things that go on. And I would submit to you that there probably very much are. We just don't identify it or realize.
Maybe more for her than for me. But,
certainly.
He had a stroke when I was in elementary school.
Definitely.
And it paralyzed half of his body, and obviously he didn't drink after that, but.
Yeah, definitely for your mom, I would think. I mean, these things are, and I've had addiction in my family as well. I mean, I've definitely experienced watching some of this. Thankfully, not a direct parent of mine, but and I didn't know him well because he died when I was young, but I had a grandfather kind of as well. And so, some of the family stories and some of the things, I mean, yeah, man, this stuff is, it has impact. So it's interesting, as I'm glad, I didn't plan that, but I'm glad we started this out, with that notion. Let's touch base at that again at the end and see what you think.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
He had an interesting story. I don't want to get too far off topic, but he was born in the Georgia mountains way back when. I think there were 13 kids. 7 of them did not live to adulthood.
Oh man.
Because that was back when we didn't have medicines and stuff like that.
Okay.
And he was just old, and his family were moonshiners.
Yeah.
And his father passed away when his mother was pregnant with him. And his older brother, moonshiners, thought it was funny to watch a little kid stagger around, so they would give him moonshine when he was, just a boy growing up.
Wow.
And so he really didn't have much of a chance as far as alcoholism was
Sucking down
concerned.
moonshine,
Yeah.
man.
So, but anyway, it's an interesting story.
It is, yeah.
A bygone era.
Yeah, and there's some things that when we talk about addiction, different cultures seem to have different rates of it, and that, I don't want to go too far into it. You just tickled my brain with the idea of, just anytime you talk. Isn't it interesting to me though, Craig? Anytime you talk about addiction on our show, I think I feel your curiosity and interest about it. And that's one of the impetuses of doing the show. I feel like people, when you talk about mental health and substance abuse, like it's almost just fascinating to just kick around, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be.
It's like a mystery / science to it / curiosity. Like, how the hell do you drink 27 bottles of Seagrams in 1 week?
Yeah, I'd be dead.
I'd
be dead.
It's a lot of alcohol.
2 or 3 drinks makes me feel like crap. If I had, I would seriously die if I had as much as he did.
Listen, people get their ability to develop tolerance at a blood alcohol level of 0.08 in most states is the legal limit to drive, because your body is affected. It used to be 0.1. Well, if you build that up to like 0.2, you're like completely trashed, man. I mean, you're wrecked. Yeah. And everybody knows it.
Yeah.
If you get a blood alcohol level of 0.4, that's the point at which you have comas and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you do start checking out.
Right.
College students listening, that's real. People do overdose. People do die from what you call alcohol poisoning. And that's just because your brain has shut off and forgets to tell your lungs to breathe. But an alcoholic, Craig, can have a blood alcohol level above 0.4 and walk, talk, dare I say drive.
Wow.
Sometimes.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is.
The human body it's
resilient.
It's a word. That's a word. So what happens to the family? Let's get into that. God, it's funny. I just got to tell you, Craig, as I was doing this show prep, I think I did this today. Look at these handouts I give you for the show notes. We got show notes as a handout.
I was wondering why I had so many papers here.
Yeah, man. I mean, because I got a file. I got a file in my office, and it's over the years, just at trainings and different things that I've accumulated here and there. These are things that I started. I mean, a couple of these come from my very first job. This one right here, this letting go one, that comes directly from the DUI class that I taught up in West Virginia at WVU. My God, and I still use these. I still use these from time to time because I don't use my handouts in my file cabinet anymore. I don't know. I just I feel like people get information different ways, and I don't give a lot of handouts and things anymore, but that's where these things came from. So I'm pulling out, when I do this stuff with these sheets, I'm pulling out old history. I think is my
going way back.
I'm going way back on this stuff. And so even as I looked at launching this, I'm going to look at the family roles. It's funny because this literally was the DUI class from, I got to figure that out, 1998, 1997, graduated. No, man, 96. I started teaching those classes. 1996, I believe. And it's interesting, too, just to point out and make my point for you therapists out there. I did Google this one like I usually do. Just kind of popped on, see what's out there, see if I missed anything in my thinking. And and because I go down all through what I want to say, and then I kind of pop on, and every now and again I'll add a link and put that in there. This stuff is all what's out there. It's
still the same stuff, huh?
It really kind of is. I don't know if we need like some really smart neurobiologists, people talking about astrophysics and.
What do you think we've learned all that we need to know, or do you think there are new breakthroughs to be?
I think there's definitely new breakthroughs to be made.
And why do you think nobody's figuring this stuff out? Do you think these psychedelic experiments are going to be?
Not really. I think they haven't figured some of this stuff out because it's a really cool question, Craig. I think we haven't figured it out, and by figuring it out, I mean, well, I think my answer will show what I'm saying. Recently, we've done these shows on neurochemistry. We've done these shows on hormones. We can't even name all of the chemicals that are in our body, right? So when you're talking about all of mental health and all of substance abuse, we can't like fix it. We can't like make a pill to make it go away. We really only manage this stuff. And so I don't know what it's going to take, like a breakthrough like penicillin, right? Doctors couldn't fix crap back in the day. I mean, you'd go to them and then, I don't know, they'd put a leech on you or whatever they did, right?
Yeah.
But we figured out penicillin is this crazy mold stuff that actually kills this shit. And we could send that into your body and it's actually going to kill this cell. And that's how we do a lot of treatments, because we came across that. Well, I don't know when we're going to get with that hormones and, chemicals and neurotransmitters and all of that nano stuff that goes on in our chemistry system. That's really a lot of what mental health and substance abuse is those diagnostic conditions based on all that. And we don't know that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The most interesting thing recently, they're playing around with brain imaging. I don't know how much that's going to do, taking a picture of something. It's going to help. It's helping.
Do you think there's really a need, an urge to find a cure for these kind of things? To be able to, because I don't want to get I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but you hear about all these people who've had, like Royal Rife and those kind of folks who've had cures for cancer and whatnot. And you think about all the money that would come out of the economy if we cured cancer. Mm-hmm. And so there's people who believe that we really don't want to cure it. We just want to treat it so we can continue to pour billions of dollars into the economy on a on a yearly basis. So is there a conspiracy theory kind of things along the lines of that too, you think?
I don't tend to. In my own fun thoughts when I'm hanging out in the backyard, it's fun to kick some of those things around like that. But I tend to believe conspiracy thinking like that is falsely directed. I think we want to find ways to manage this effectively, but what you're talking about is the whole emotional system of a person. This show, Family Dynamics, is talking about how an emotional system of a person is affected by a person. What are you going to do to cure that? Human beings are emotional creatures. It's more sort of understanding ourselves and managing this stuff.
Yeah, well, we talked about alcoholism and drug addiction, or addictions in general being something that's hereditary, so it's in people's genes,
absolutely,
or DNA or whatever. So what if we could turn the DNA on or turn it off, or
as a matter of fact,
there was a pill to prevent addictions, is that something? Because if you do that, then you don't have to. You're not emotionally affecting anybody because you're off the drugs.
I think you're absolutely right. We just mapped the genome not too long ago, and I think that type of stuff, mapping the genome, getting brain scanning and imaging, doing some of these deep, very small, I say nanotechnology, kind of small understanding of what's going on that level. Yeah, if we get good at dealing with that, we talked about sleep with Dr. Stafford. That dude wants to know more about how to affect sleep. He studied this his whole career. We don't know that.
Yeah.
We don't know how to do that.
Right.
But we're learning.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. I don't know if there was a question there. Maybe just an observation.
So family roles. Let's jump to that and get into this whole thing. What happens in families? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on codependence, but you'll talk with somebody from a codependent family, and you'll put these roles out, Craig. And it's really kind of amazing because I got a hand out on it too, but I didn't go through it because they're almost like in order, and they're almost like, oh my God, how did you get into my home? When I start describing typical roles that people get into, because they can see this family member does this and this family member does this, and oh yeah, they're clearly the fill in the mascot or whatever. It's like it's like somebody has been a fly on the wall in my household seeing how we operate, kind of thing. Because these responses are just the way human beings find themselves in situations and responding. So you've got family roles, a codependent person. You're called the chief enabler, right? You've heard of the term enabler.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's a codependent tendencies, enabling the addict. Because, of course, the first role is the addict. Second one oftentimes is the spouse. They're codependent and they're enabler. The oldest child doesn't always have to go in this order, by the way, but you'll have people that take on the role of the family hero, right? They're going to go and provide success. They're going to go and super excel in their grades or athletes or whatever. They're just going to, go and not be the loser that my family is operating as. And they build their ego by being super productive, super strong, super smart. And they go after it, family hero. But then you'll have the other kid, the family scapegoat. So they're the one that gets in trouble. They're the one that goes off onto tangents and impulsive. You know, they start getting into fights. And everyone likes to dump on them and scream at them and displace their anger, you know, from all the stress of the family and put it onto them. So there's a scapegoat. The third child, or one of the children, takes on the role of a mascot, right? So they're the clown. They provide the fun. They don't want to be serious about anything. The way they cope with all the stress is they just throw out all this, you know, goofiness. It's like, we just laugh about this and goof off and be silly and have fun. Right?
So these are roles people play subconsciously.
Correct. Tacitly.
Okay.
You would think almost. I'm going to find a way to cope.
Families in general, or just families that are having these codependent issues?
It's highly identified in chemically dependent families.
Okay.
Yeah. Highly found in that, because there's a whole crap ton of stuff to cope with.
Okay. Really. Right.
You know, when you live in a family with a life of addiction, man, I mean, there's shit going on, crazy shit all the time. Like, it's crazy, jacked up stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The last role is a lost child. And so this is a person that just sort of shuts down, gets into their own world, creates a whole facade, and just goes off into their way of coping, of just shutting down. Now, you're right. We do see some similarities in just, you know, families and people. This is the way that we operate. But those are the typical, not necessarily in that order, but actually oftentimes in that order, the way that people react. Sound crazy?
No. Don't sound crazy at all.
I need some of that water. Codependence, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. Please, though, go check out our show on codependence, because we spent the whole time talking about that. And it's really, excuse me, it's really important to understand what codependence is, because that is heavy and hardcore in a codependent family, or in a chemically dependent family, but exists elsewhere. And we talked a lot about that for an entire show, so I'm not going to talk much about that here. But I will say how we fall into the traps of that. You know, Craig, you got to understand, as you saw your, you know, people in your life go through the crazy realities of watching somebody do this. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the things I made this statement. One of the things that I hate to work with the most in a therapy relationship as a parent that's got a kid with chemical dependency. That's a tough one.
You hate to work with parents who have kids that are chemically dependent.
Because it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you are watching from birth this kid grow and develop, as all parents out there know and understand. You see them get smarter and stronger and develop their personality, develop their skills, develop their passions, develop their interests, essentially develop their whole personality and core self. You know?
Yeah.
And that happens rapidly when the kid's little, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and they get into school at 6, 7, they start making friends. They start building social relationship skills and, you know, their own emotion management skills. I mean, all this stuff is going on. It is a deep relationship watching as a parent. I know you're a dad and I'm a dad. And at some point,
he gets taken all the way.
Gone. Like wrecked.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just so awful to watch that. And then, as the codependence with parenting happens anyway, you're kind of sucked in. Because you start seeing this develop. It's like, man, their attitudes change. Their friendships are changing. Their behavior sucks. Is this just teenage years? Is this being a teenager? Well, it feels more than that. You wonder. You don't know. I got to fix this. I got to be a good parent. Parents get blamed. I don't want to be blamed. I got to help him. I got to help her. And it's just a downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
It's a train wreck.
Yeah, I've seen that happen to people.
And then we'll talk about it in a little while, but the bottom line is you then have people look at you and say, hey, kick them out. Kick them.
It's easy to say, right? It's easy to say that.
Yeah, it is.
Dad, if it was my kid, I'd put him out on the street.
Right? Right? No, man, you get sucked in.
Come home and doors be locked and locks changed. Stuff be on the porch.
Right. And some of that is absolutely, rational, and we'll talk about that tonight. But I'm just making the point of how easily you get sucked in, man, into this stuff, and spouses as well. You want to call work and all this codependent behavior. You don't want to watch this train wreck keep going on. It's just a mess. Mm-hmm. It's terrible. So yeah, all you parents out there, I definitely work with the issue. Don't get me wrong. I'm just telling you, man, it's a tough one when you're talking to a parent with a kid with addiction. The solution handout. This definitely come from the class. This is an Al-Anon special. So what they look about is how to get out of some of these things in looking at the horrors that we just talked about, the characteristics and whatnot of a family and the roles and all of that. So I think I'm actually gonna pull this wrong. I'm gonna go through the characteristics first because I didn't even do that. Why am I talking about going to the solution and letting go, and I haven't even talked about the characteristics? Pull an audible. We just highlighted some of the depths, and I tried to convey with my voice the pain that people get into. That's what you're looking at. Well, what are the dysfunctional family characteristics? I mean, when you're living with this, and you've heard some of the stories, I mean, parents might begin to disappear and not show up for a night or two, and you're wondering, well, where's Daddy? Where's Daddy? You're a 5-year-old kid. Well, Daddy's busy, honey. He's at work. No, Daddy's got caught up in crystal meth, and he's on a run, right? Or, you know what? My mom is heavy into business, and I know she's running a corporation, and she's where Daddy? Where's Mommy? She's always home late. Well, yeah, she is. You're right. She's busy with working. No, she's getting trashed most nights after work, with her business partners, and she brings home a lot of money. I mean, the look that a family has varies greatly. As a matter of fact, I think I said this when we talked about addiction. It's been kind of found. You know who the number one profession is? Do you remember? The number one profession that's found to have the most addiction percentage-wise?
I have no idea.
You don't remember?
Uh-uh.
I know I said it before. Dentists.
I don't know if you said that or not.
I'm pretty sure I did. Dentists, because, I don't know, it's a stressful job. People don't want to go see you. That accessibility is way high, I
knew that was one of the unhappiest jobs.
Yeah. It also has the highest rate of addiction. Number 2 is actually air traffic controllers.
Wow.
Now, I heard these things years ago, so I use statistics buffs out there. You can probably debunk me, but that's what I've always used over the many years, just to demonstrate, like, look, families are not crazy looking that have addiction in them. You'd never know it, that your next door neighbor has this going on. They hide it well. They hide it super well. But inside the confines of that home and in the minds of those family members, look at what's going on. Suspicion. Okay? Family members learn that an alcoholic and addict cannot be trusted. The entire household becomes filled with the suspicions. Don't trust. That's absolutely an unwritten rule in the relationships in the family. You can't trust people. You're suspicious all the time. Oh, you say Mommy is just working late tonight, huh? Oh, okay. Yeah, I believe that. And off they go doing their own business, right? Where's Daddy? I mean, why didn't he come to my baseball game? He doesn't care about me. No, he was just kind of busy. The car broke down. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, was he drunk? He hit a fence post again and he's embarrassed. I don't trust what you just told me, right? You never really know what you're told and what you see is really what's going on. Because guess what? Nobody's really talking about it. Can you imagine not even being able to rely on the facts of what you're told? It does a number on your head, right? So suspicion is oftentimes a big characteristic. Guilt. Listen, Craig, if you see something as a kid and you're told that you didn't really see it correctly, what do you start to think about your ability to see things correctly?
Maybe I can't.
I'm missing it.
Maybe I'm wrong.
And I suck. So, like, maybe I am the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guilty. Guilt and shame are powerful characteristics that develop in the minds and eyes of family members. Okay? Can you guess this one? Why do we feel insecure? What happens in developing insecurity?
So it relates to being in a substance abuse family?
Yeah. How do you feel if you can't rely on really basically basics?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're seriously wondering where dinner's coming from a lot of times.
Yeah.
Kids raise themselves. Talk about latchkey kids and screens for kids that we've had those conversations. Well, when the mom's out with the dad having beers because the mom's trying to make drinking normal and okay and have a date night, but the dad's getting trashed and you have to kind of worry about how you're getting home. Well, you're kind of worried about dealing with your drunk husband and what the heck happened to the kids at home. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I couldn't even keep track of it. I guess they came home from school. I don't really have the capacity to track all of it. So the kids are sitting there like, I don't know where stuff's coming from. I'm developing insecurity because I don't know what to rely on. Fear. You know what it feels like to not know what to expect?
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah.
And then when you see shit starting to happen and expecting that more shit's going to happen.
Yep.
You ever have a drunken rage from a person who's supposed to be like the stable one in the household? Like blast out at you? Scary. I know of instances where my parents fought loudly or did, big, huge arguments. That happens in families. I almost can count them and remember like specifics. It's not like every month or, 6-7 times a year, even if it's like every other month. A knockdown, drag out, blowout, rageful, curse word laced rampage in a drunken stupor. I personally don't even know what that would be like to live with. But I can tell you I'd be pretty fearful.
Yeah, it would be. It would be fearful and uncertain and all the other things you're talking about.
Isolated. Because there ain't a damn person I'm going to tell about what happened in my house last night.
Mm-hmm.
My mom came home and the car ended up hitting the garage door and it got broke and my dad got pissed off and my mom literally crawled in from the garage and I think she was in the kitchen floor and my dad went and got water and I went to bed. I don't know. So how was your night last night?
Yeah, those are humiliating things to have to tell somebody, right?
Who the hell am I going to tell happened that way?
Yeah.
And you know what? Kids learn very quickly that they're not going to bring their kids to hang out at this house. I'm going to your house.
Yeah.
I'm coming to hang out with Craig at Craig's house because Craig don't need to know what the hell happens at my house.
That's right.
If you're courageous enough to begin making friends and go out and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the shame and the guilt and the poor self-view and all the stuff builds.
Mm-hmm.
Disappointment. Commitments aren't kept. I made a commitment, literally, my son, between shows, right? He wants me to bring him bottled water. We're out of water at the house. What do you think the chances are that I'm going to stop and get that bottled water and he'll have it tomorrow?
Probably 100%.
It is absolutely as close to 100% as I can make it.
Yeah.
He might not get the Cheetos that he wants to get. What else the heck did he want? He wanted something about flaming avocados or something. He probably ain't going to get that stuff, but I made a commitment to get water, and it will happen. And he can rely on that. He would be shocked if there wasn't water. He won't be shocked about the Cheetos, I'll tell you that. But when you live in a system where this isn't the case, you are absolutely disappointed all the time, and you just don't know what to rely on because commitments are generally not kept a high percentage of the time. They're kept a lot of the times, particularly in affluent families and stuff, right? Okay, embarrassment. Doesn't need much comment.
We kind of hit on that already. That's why you wouldn't tell somebody, right? Or have somebody to your house because it's embarrassing to for people to see that kind of craziness.
How quickly can I get out of this neighborhood right now because I'm 16 years old and I can get the hell out of here, and I know that the neighbors have heard this shit going on.
Yeah.
I need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And the last big thing they have listed here, resentment. We talked about that last show pretty strong.
We did. Yeah, and stuck spots.
Yeah. I mean, the resentments. I mean, you just, God, people, will you not, why can I not have parents that make sense? Nothing here makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to convey a little bit. How am I doing? Let me check in with you. Do you get a little sense in those sort of vignettes and in the characteristic lists there, a little bit kind of like what it might be like in an alcoholic dysfunctional family? What are you hearing with some of that, and how does that, am I doing an okay job conveying that a little bit?
I think so, man. You're describing an environment where there's fear and where there's insecurity and uncertainty, and if it's the kid who's having to go through that, then that's, kids like routine, kids like security. They want to know that they're cared for and loved, and in a situation like that, there's none of that. And there's walking around on eggshells probably, especially if the addict becomes violent. Then you're afraid physically for your brothers and sisters, and potentially one of your parents, depending on what's going on there, whether it's one or both. And so that's I think you're getting your message across.
The characteristic I added a few. That was actually just from the handout. It'll be on the show notes.
And that might be from the side of the parent being the addict, but
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And the dynamics change a little bit when your sibling is or whatever, but some of these characteristics also still oblige. I mean, look, I love you, brother. I'm going to talk about you for just a second. He was a little bit of a rebel rouser when we was in high school, and I come up after him. And I did. I kind of felt little basics of embarrassments. I mean, the teachers heard Gazdick, and they're like, oh, God. I just knew they were thinking, oh, God, we got another Gazdick coming in or whatever. And so I had to, that's part of why, I wanted to do good. I took a different role and different route insofar as trying to get good grades and trying to do, whatever. Probably why I started to be a daggone rule follower. Who knows? My psychology, right? My crazy head has different things going on. Point is, there's a layer there that, people understand the culture and the name of your family, and you want to kind of fix that or repair that or hide from that or, act out of anger because of that. You take different routes, right? A couple other characteristics. You mentioned eggshell. Yeah, total eggshell walking. You're never really secure. You're never really feeling comfortable. Another one is blame. There's blame going on all over the place because I'm the addict and I never have caused a problem for anybody, man. Don't you bring your stuff to me. I don't never cause a problem to nobody. All I do is provide for this family. Well, hell, I mean, if you were sober, then the life of this family would be really, 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 really better. But, okay, you learn really fast. Don't confront that one. So you just walk around on eggshells, trying not to cause any problems.
Yeah.
Another one that's used constantly in the substance abuse field when you're working with families is the pink elephant metaphor. You ever hear of a pink elephant?
I don't think I have.
No?
No.
Dang,
pink flamingos, but not elephants.
Yeah, we got the pink elephant.
What is the pink elephant?
Listen, if you have a pink elephant in the living room, that's a pet in the house. You're going to, comment about it. You're going to, be concerned about this thing.
Well, I've heard the elephant in the room kind of.
The elephant in the room is the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, the elephant
in
the
room. All right. Well, yeah, I'm with you then.
Yeah.
I've never heard it called the pink elephant.
But. I mean, a family that has a pink elephant in the room or an elephant of any sort is a major issue that no one talks about. You just learn not to say anything about mommy's drugs. Notice how I'm changing the gender, because we now know women have addiction just as much as men have addiction issues. And so when a mommy has drug and alcohol addictions, the kids are like, they learn. No, don't talk about it. When dad's a drunk, you learn, no, don't confront, don't leave that elephant alone. It's fine. Even though it just about crushed you, It's it's fine.
Yeah.
That's just people don't talk about the real feelings and the real things going on in these families. There is a lockdown on it. So yeah, those are the characteristics. That's yeah.
So who are you dealing with in these situations? Do you have whole families come and say, "Hey, look, man, I'm addicted and I'm tearing my family apart and I want to get help"?
Good question and good statement. The reason why I say that is because this is why I have a pet peeve in my therapy industry. I think it is crazy. Not crazy. I think it's a big glaring lacking of insight when mental health clinicians refuse to engage in training or understanding on some level with substance abuse. Now that's a little bit of a bombastic statement, if you will, in my field, believe it or not.
Say it one more time.
I think that it's a little bit. It's a lacking characteristic for therapists, mental health clinicians, or psychiatrists to refuse or acknowledge that they don't have any understanding and any interest in getting some level of training with substance abuse. Mm-hmm. Many people in my field do not know, and admittedly so, have no interest in dealing with anything that's substance abuse related, and I don't understand it.
So you don't know what the reason for that is. But what do you? Does it make them less of a therapist or inadequate or unable to help people? Why do you have a problem with that?
It makes a major blind spot because the answer to your question is all sorts of people do I deal with these things with. You may come to me for an anxiety issue, and I take a family history. And when I find out you come from a family that has an alcoholic, dysfunctional mother or father, I am realizing all of this stuff that I'm talking about today and more. And if I have no training about that, I'm blind. I'm like completely blind about all the dynamic effects that affects this person's life. And so that sucks.
There's also counselors, too, that are strictly substance abuse, right? Is that also true?
Yes.
And how does that hamstring them? And does it hamstring them not to have training in other areas?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, on a podcast show very recently, I did hear Claudia Black herself. And I loved it because she spoke to that side from the substance abuse side, needing to deal with the mental health characteristics. She was like, I now understand, like, I need to know about depression and anxiety conditions and what all that is because I deal with it when I'm talking about it with a family member or substance abuse family treatment group. I mean, all this stuff comes in together. So absolutely, as admitted by Ms. Black herself. And I feel comfortable saying that because I did hear.
So Claudia Black is a therapist herself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, when you talked about her earlier,
you didn't realize
assumed that she was potentially somebody who struggled.
Yeah, probably. Well, she did.
Okay. So then she became a substance abuse therapist later.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And
that's an interesting story.
I don't think she had addiction herself. Like I said, I'm not a Claudia Black biographer, but yeah, she definitely had a lot of these family issues and stuff going on.
So this may be off the topic a little bit, but in the field of therapy, are there specialties? I mean, obviously there are, it sounds like, but why would you be? Is there an argument for or against that?
As with most professions, I guess, specialties with medical treatments and whatnot, if you want to kind of single into something, but an oncologist is going to understand certainly as a general. Let me say, is it true to say that anybody who goes to a specialty medical practice has to go through med school generally anyway first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get a background and everything. They specialize in brain surgery or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Do you have to? I know we talked about schizophrenia, and I don't think that's something you kind of refer out. If I'm not mistaken, is that a true statement?
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
Are there other mental conditions you might say, hey, I don't have training in this and I need some help?
First of all, I'll say I have absolutely worked with people that have schizophrenia. I feel very comfortable working with that. Not a whole lot, to be honest with you, man. I really feel as though, particularly as long as I've been doing this, there's not a whole lot that I'm going to come across that I just have a complete avoidance of. I did have a tendency to refer out for like transgender issues. I don't anymore. So I don't know. I don't. Nothing that really glares out at me, to be honest with you. But if you're in depth and need more than what I can do in a therapy office, I refer to stuff all the time. You know, a treatment group, or just today I was referring out to somebody for a substance abuse IOP program. You know, just because I can't offer enough, time in an outpatient clinic. So you could say I specialize in outpatient therapy clinic work. So I can't see people 3-4 times a week and that type of thing. Or crisis work, I refer out, and all that.
Right. Okay.
Emergent care, Yeah. So, okay. Let me tell you Yeah, I think we're doing pretty good. I think we're doing pretty good on time too. Here's what do you do with a family member, particularly a parent. Now, before I go into the parent, I missed the letting go thing. Check this out. So those are the characteristics, and when you look at, well, what do we do with this? What's the solution? How do we move forward and all? I'm gonna actually just read this handout because I think it's cool enough to do that in a broad scoped way, because it has a lot of really cool messages on it, and it's pretty much Al-Anon material. So when you're trying to get clear from the characteristics that we just laid out and trying to characterize how it is that family functions and whatnot, part of what you really try to do to get well, part of what you really try to do to get out of the codependence that gets created, both the kids, but especially the parent or the spouse of an addict, is you try to let go. You're trying to let go, right? And letting go is so complicated. And incidentally, this letting go stuff that I'm going to read, it can also be for anything you're trying to let go of. Like was it the last show we were talking about the Tomb of the Unknown?
Yeah.
That was that last show?
That was last show.
Right? The Tomb of the Unknown is a practice, a ritual of trying to let go of something. You have to listen to the last show if you don't know what that is, guys. Letting go does not mean to stop caring. It means I can't do it for somebody else. To let go is not to cut myself off. It's the realization I can't control another. To let go is to not enable, but to allow learning from natural consequences. To let go is to admit powerlessness, which means the outcome is not in my hands. To let go is not to try and change or blame another. It is to make the most of myself. To let go is not to care for, but to care about. To let go is not to fix, but to be supportive. To let go is to not judge, but to allow another human being to be a human being. To let go is not to be in the middle of arranging all the outcomes, but to allow others to affect their own destinies. To let go is to not be protective. It is to permit another to face reality. That's tough for parents and kids, right? Read it again. To let go is not to be protective. It is to permit another to face reality. To let go is to not deny, but to accept. To let go is to not nag, scold, or argue, but instead to search out my own shortcomings and correct them. To let go is to not adjust everything to my desires, but to take each day as it comes and cherish myself in it. To let go is to not regret the past, but to grow and live for the future. To let go is to fear less and love more. And what
all right, well, that sounds great and all, what do you call it? Mushy or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so good. But what do you do, man, if your kid's on drugs? If your kid's addicted to crack, what does letting go mean? I mean, if he's stealing your TV and going through your wallet while you're sleeping and, staying gone for days at a time and coming home to regroup and then he runs off in your car, I mean, what do you kick him out? I mean, how do you let go from that?
Okay. So Jim actually on our show, when he shared his story, literally did steal from his parents and family. I mean, people literally do that. That's not a joke,
I know
guys,
people who've done
steal
that.
Shit.
Yeah.
They take your stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I think I understand what you're asking, and that was actually on my show notes to talk about. Because a lot of these things, if you listen back to them, the second part of each one of those statements is really kind of looking at changing your behavior. which leads to some of the tough calls and saying, what you're going to do with specifics. Maybe you call the police. Maybe you do this. Maybe you do that. Natural consequences. All these things really play out, and addicts have some pain when they do these things.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is delivered by you who's calling the police or whatnot.
Right. I get the letting go and I get the changing my behavior, but if I've got somebody under my roof who's stealing from me, and does that mean kick him out? What do you do? How do you let go from that, man? I mean, you can't tell me letting go is to fear less and love more when I'm worried my car's going to get stolen in the middle of the night. So, so the addict can go down there and get his fix.
I'm not going to live a life of fearing what's going to happen the next day. I'm not going to live a life of fearing what you're going to do to me. And instead, I'm going to love you while I take care of the priority, which is myself. And here's my landing spot. And that's just an attempt to sort of get with how we're trying to switch some of the very natural states of mind that people get in when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. Because your question is completely valid. Here's my landing spot, because it really comes right down to this. And I told you, this is one of the toughest things I deal with in the therapy situation, honestly, because of the pain that's involved in it. My personal landing spot over many years of working with parents and the concept of tough love, right, is that it's bottom line okay. Parents need to understand, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it is okay to provide, all caps, ONLY, only food and shelter for your child. 35, 45 years old. 50. Right? This stuff. It is okay to provide just those basic things. And when I say only, I mean only. Because all the codependent traps fall into there. I don't know many people that are very successful in being able to provide only that. But we're talking about a pretty unhappy, living situation for that addict who's in your house. They don't have the TV. They don't have shit that you're buying them to put shoes on their feet. They don't have all the food that they want and all the stuff that's going on and all the blaming that they blame you and you end up overcompensating. There's a lot of crap going on. I'm talking about only food for the purpose of nutrition and only shelter. And it's also okay not to provide those things. That's my landing spot. Parents need to have permission to provide only food and shelter as a bottom line, or it's okay not to provide those things.
Yeah. I think the not providing those things is very difficult, right?
I mean,
if your kid's hooked on drugs and he's stealing and all that stuff, and you say, look, you're out of here, pal.
Yeah. You got to go.
And you drive by 2nd Street and see him sitting out there under a tree with his backpack, homeless.
That literally happens.
Oh, yeah. That's tough, man.
It literally happens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that's why I kind of got to this point, I mean, it's personally hard for me to sit in a therapy office with somebody after 5 years of therapy even, and to see somebody go through dealing with a kid, to sit there and say to them, I think you should kick that kid out. Yeah? I don't know how I look somebody in the eye that way and say that.
Do you say that? Have you said that to people?
No, that's what I'm saying. I can say, it is a realistic option to not allow them to live there. Absolutely. I say that all the time.
Yeah. I've known guys who got addicted, and their parents would have been 100,000% completely justified in doing that.
Yeah.
And they probably should have.
Absolutely.
But they just couldn't do it.
Well, be careful with the word should, but I mean, it is a very realistic option because they're burning out the family, man. I mean, it's also reasonable to tell your spouse, look, you can't live here. Your drug addiction is killing this family. You got to go. That's a very reasonable choice. Now, my landing spot that I'm spending a little bit of time on now is very specifically for parents with kids that have addiction issues, by the way. Obviously, you get separated and divorced all the time. with addiction as an issue. Let me rename tough love to boundary control. Craig, a lot of these things that I just read off with the letting go, a lot of that stuff is boundary control. You know, you hear people talk about tough love, and I think it's a weird phrase. I always have. But I like that it's out there because people generally kind of understand what is meant by that. It's hard to really punish a kid, but you got to do it. And that's part of the unpleasantries of being a parent. Well, I look at tough love in the way of chemically dependent families as really being boundary control. You've got to control the boundaries as it affects you, as you being the priority, not the spouse or not the kid. You can't just eat yourself to death with all of those characteristics, grief and shame and guilt and blaming and distrust and deceit and all that, and just try to function. I mean, you've got to be able to have boundaries to where you're safe from that and not as affected from that and able to cope, with life.
Yeah.
The boundary control is what we mean by tough love. Sum us up a little bit. Bring us in. I'm not done necessarily, but where are we at? What are you hearing?
Yeah, man, I'm hearing a lot of stuff. I'm hearing that dysfunctional families are due to addiction are not good.
Seriously.
I mean, I feel for kids who have to grow up in that situation, and I feel for parents who love their kids who have to deal with the things we're talking about. I've seen those things happen, man.
Yeah. It really is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking, and I tell you, a lot of domestic violence and sexual abuse histories and whatnot are linked to substance abuse. I can't do a show on family dynamics without mentioning the fact that, domestic violence. I mean, we had MJ Vess, friend of the show, with her project of Victory Lifehouse for domestic violence. Look it up, Google. It's awesome. That is that. I don't know if it is fair to say, Craig, that 100% of the time we're dealing with domestic violence issues when we have alcoholism and whatnot as a part of the deal. But, I would venture to guess it is pretty much close.
Yeah.
And sexual abuse. I mean, we don't have a lot of time to spend on it, but the boundary infringements are very uncommon. Did I say uncommon? Are very common in a family where chemical dependency, drugs or alcohol is. You don't have locked doors. You have sexual activity, sexually acting out, sexual promiscuity, affairs that kind of come in. There's a lot of shit that little kids see.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people, man, who are listening or in one of these situations?
Go get help. Don't be alone. Get out of your family. Therapy, obviously. Get help. Good segue, because there is stuff out there to help manage this. Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, CODA. These are all, and they'll be on show notes. Please actually pay attention on the second page, Craig, and get those on the show notes for sure. ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. There are 12-step programs out there for people to tap into to really get help. You don't want to be isolated alone with this stuff in your head.
Yeah.
Start by telling a friend truly what did happen last night. Right? Really. Some shit went down. You need to tell somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just lock that in your own head. That's not emotionally safe or well.
Yeah. Yeah, our last show was on being stuck and growing up in a household like this, or seeing some of this stuff happen. You may be stuck for that reason, right, Chris? I mean,
absolutely.
You probably ought to talk to somebody to get some of this stuff out.
Do I have the show? I do have the show notes here from last show. We just did 2 in a row.
Yeah, we did.
My brain's dead. I'm still doing okay, though. I sound all right, don't I?
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I'm actually brain dead. If I look at what creates stuck spots, let's just compare this out, and then we'll end up with our question. I just remember we need to come back to. See what you're thinking about that. Pull your thoughts together for that, right? The 3 generations of sobriety before you get rid of it, right?
Okay.
We're gonna end with that. But what creates a stuck spot from last show? Fear, check. Insecurities, check. Believe if I start, I can't stop, because if I tell all the shit that went on in my chemically dependent family, I won't ever have to stop. Check. Lack of insights into our mental health and status, I'd say check. Resentments, I'd say check. Lack of social supports, I'd say check. Stress, too much hitting at once, my God, that's all the time, I'd say check. Thoughts of racing, thus hard to express them. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe not in a chemically dependent family. Strong tendencies to shut down, such that one does with engulfment or other insecurities. Check. Dude, in a chemically dependent family, creating stuck spots, I'd say we're 100%. I didn't plan
every one of them, right?
I did not plan that, but how about that?
Yeah. Good point.
So, let's summarize with your thoughts then currently, see how we did. I say that a long time ago in my career, I heard that statement. It blew me away, but I get it now. I really do.
What statement was that?
It takes 3 sober generations to eradicate the emotional effects of one person's alcoholic or drug-addicted behavior. That means to say if your parent was a drug alcoholic, addict, or whatever, don't forget the process addictions of sex addictions, food addictions, gambling addictions, or online gaming addictions, by the way. We talked a lot about drugs and alcohol tonight, but that means you are the first sober person. Your kids, the second sober generation. By the time you have a grandchild, you're finally kind of eradicating the effects that are dynamically woven into your life as it relates to being so related to a chemically dependent person.
And if chemical dependence is hereditary,
right?
Maybe somebody along the way.
We said 3 sober generations.
Yeah. You did clarify that, right? So yeah, I mean.
So what do you think? We started out with, do we need to play it back? Or I forget exactly what you said, but you're like,
Well, based on the things you said, man, I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about my grandfather, my mother, and myself, I would say that has been eradicated, at least on my end.
What do you mean, eradicated? Yeah,
you said it takes 3 generations. So,
yeah.
So I don't know how my
mother. A little bit clearer. I mean,
I don't know how my mom feels about it, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing, at least from my grandfather's life and the way my mother brought me up when I was a kid. She didn't drink, and I didn't feel any of the ways that you described there, any of the things you said because of my mother when I was growing up. Yeah. As a result of her experience with her father. So
right.
So I mean, I would say that
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It sounds like you moved maybe a little bit, but not as much in sort of saying, I don't know that it takes 3 generations. I'm saying
maybe perhaps not. Right. With my mom, I don't think, like I said, maybe she didn't have any of the effects that you're talking about in her life, and
it's hard to say and look.
Yeah,
closer,
right. It is hard to say.
It really is. It's really hard to say. But I think that having the characteristics that we spent some time talking on today, I mean, they're hard to really disable because they're such a core foundation. I mean, you can operate even if you look at, like, for instance, the family hero, right? I mean, they look sharp. They're very successful. They're very engaged. They're very wealthy oftentimes. I mean, they're the athletes. They're successful people. Well, you would say, hell, they don't have the effects of emotional dynamics from their parents' alcoholism, right? Look how successful they are. They got their shit together. I want to be like them. But on the inside, these things of doubt drive their success. These things of shame drive what they're doing, and they may instill that into their kids, and then their kids kind of get balanced, and they parent their kids to where it's kind of like, okay, hey, listen, be successful, work hard, but don't be crazy about it, be healthy, have some friends, and relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it kind of plays out in mysterious sort of. And by the way, that's what we do in therapy. In a therapy experience, we're really looking at those patterns, and on a depthy level, it kind of, how does that play into how is life like now? Mm-hmm. And how do you want life to be like? Where are we moving? Because these foundational things are probably really in place unbeknownst to the person themselves.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Take us out of here. I'm not sure where we're going next.
ThroughATherapistEyes.com, folks. You can find individual entries for each show, links to social media, the newsletter sign up. We would love it if you would tell your friends and family about our show if you're enjoying it. I don't think we mentioned Whole Family Life, but if you go to our website, and you click on the Whole Family Life link, there's 126 different health products you can shop for out there. CBDs, anti-aging, hormone creams, nutritional supplements, and they're all of very high quality. And if you purchase from our link, then you'll be supporting the show financially. So you don't know where we're going to go next?
There's a possibility we're going to talk about sex.
Sex
addiction.
Man.
Maybe?
I'm game.
Sound interesting?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting.
Because I think there's some really things out there that'll blow people's minds about the internet and kind of what's happened with, the proliferation of sex addiction in today's society around the world. Kind of, Bill Clinton put it on the map, maybe. In I think he actually wrote a book, My Two Lives or My Parallel Lives or something like that. Am I remembering that correctly? Do you ever hear of that?
I have not.
I feel like you did. And so he was out there. And forgive me, I'm obviously talking off the top of my head. I don't know that for sure. We can look it up. But
should we say Epstein didn't kill himself? Is that?
I'm not going there. But...
man, there's some interesting stuff going on there.
Oh boy!
I've been watching a little bit of news.
Have you?
And I think the family hired a medical examiner who said it looked like murder. Then there was this ABC reporter on an open mic. Did you hear about this?
She
said they had pictures and the lady's story and everything, and ABC wouldn't run the story. Oh yeah,
really?
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
yeah.
And just so people know, Epstein is who? He's in jail.
He's dead now.
Prison, and he committed right,
quote, suicide.
Right.
But he was this billionaire pedophile that was rolling around with some high-profile people in our world.
Wow.
I think Bill Clinton was on his plane. Prince Andrew.
There's a lot of people at those
other
parties,
names
right?
have been thrown around. Yeah,
and that's also sex trafficking issues, and oh god, just horrible.
It's a horrible story. And,
horrible horrors.
Very interesting.
Horrible horrors.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that uplifting note, I feel like we need a positive, motivational.
Yeah, I think we should roll with that
show.
Right? I think it'd be an interesting show. Let's do that next time.
All right. See you guys.